People seem to be implying that I shouldn't get too comfortable.
Oh, nonsense. It's not as if anyone expects you to, vanish overnight under mysterious circumstances to a strange Minbari post. Why, that would be unprecedented in the station's history. If I were married to Londo Mollari, I'd be concerned.
Jikar, if you were married to Londo Mollari, we'd all be concerned.
You have transmissions holding.
Patch incoming signal. Full audio and video decode.
Purple files accessed.
What you are about to see has never been shown to anyone outside the Drake House.
And so it begins.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to Gray 17, a Babylon 5 podcast, a part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. We are a group of newbies and first ones who are either watching the show for the very first time or have probably watched it way too many times. And we are here to discuss today Soulmates, which is season 2. A lot of you are going to be asking right off the bat, why are we talking about Soulmates? Well, it's because, partially because Scott screwed up last week and said, hey, we're watching Soulmates. Along with that, we are in the process of figuring out what order we're going to watch this thing in. Because as you are probably aware, as of the dropping of this episode, HBO Max no longer has Babylon 5. It is leaving or left January 25th. That was the order we were using because that was the most accessible to most people who are listening to this podcast. The thought and the intention is I would assume that sooner or later Babylon 5 will find its way to another streamer or find its way back onto HBO Max. As JMS even pointed out in the tweet, these licenses happen for about every 2 years and then they get reset and go somewhere else. So right now, we're going to continue on watching the show. Obviously, all of our guys here have copies one way or the other. You can get digital copies. You'll have to pay for them, unfortunately, in the United States, or their DVDs are out there as well, too, in the secondary market. But the HBO Max order, which was the intended order, had the next episode being this week, which would have been A Race Through Dark Places. The Lurker's Guide, which shows the original airing dates, had Soulmates going first. So we're going to this week go off of the Lurker's Guide, because at that point when I was picking the episode, I was like, oh, HBO Max is dead, so we'll just do that. But I do recognize that Race Through Dark Places was intended to be the episode that came next, even though in the original airing order back in the 90s, that wasn't the case. So that's where we are in terms of order. I know some of the first ones here have thoughts about orders as well, too, so feel free to chime in. And one of these days we'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the things with this show. There's like 5 or 6 different orders because there's the intended order, there's the broadcast order, there's the UK airing order, which got all kinds of messed up. Then you've got HBO Max, which I think put the other 3 in a blender and spit something out. Mm-hmm. You've got the Apple TV order, which, by the way, we put out the new list over the weekend, right, Scott? Or right at the end of last week. Yeah. Guess what Apple updated for the Apple order?
Oh, are you serious?
I looked at that today and just went, son of a bitch.
We can't win, folks.
They changed the order on Apple TV, so I don't the hell know what order we're supposed to watch this damn show. Maybe we just figure it out week to week.
And that's, I think, what's going to have to happen is we're just going to okay, next week, watch this. Okay. Everyone's got copies of everything now. I think Justin's got season 2 on DVD and working on getting season 3 down the road. A lot of you have digital copies. Some of you bought the whole series already. We'll figure it out as we go. I will point out even JMS doesn't have an official order. Depending on what year he's talking, his orders change too. So it is what it is. I will say it will get a lot easier in a few weeks. I think once we get past the Coming of Shadows, which is not a spoiler, that's the name of the season, the show becomes much more serialized, especially when we get to the end of season 2 and into season 3. At that point, I'll be like, well, the next episode is 10 minutes after the last episode, so it shouldn't be too hard. That's the way it is right now. But to the main point, we're in new territory now that the Babylon 5, for the first time since we started this show, is no longer free to the masses with subscription. So hopefully you all stick with us. Many of you already have copies, but what I will also do is I'll do some quick research and put some links in the show notes about other places that you can find this as well too, legal places. So anyone who still may not not have a copy, I'll put some notes in there about where you can potentially find the copy as well, too. So, before we actually get to talking about this episode, Soulmates, I'm Scott, and with me as always is...
Emily.
Blake.
Justin.
Andrew.
Jessi.
Nicole.
John.
Evan.
And Ryan.
Oh no.
Spooky,
Somebody crashed the party.
Yeah, I'm back.
Ryan from Yum Yum Podcast. Now, Ryan reached out to me on Twitter and said, hey, Race Through Dark Places is coming. I really want to be on that episode. And here we are. He's on Soulmates because, again, orders are fun. And also he's got, a life or something I don't understand. So, but Ryan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us again. It's always a pleasure to have you. It's a bigger pleasure for some of us rather than the others, but we do love having you here.
Okay. Wow.
Jessi raises her hand.
I know our good friend, Jessie's very happy for me to be back.
Ryan does have a fan club on this podcast.
Yes. Jessi, Emily, Nicole, Blake, Andrew, Justin.
They've got Dakota rings.
I wasn't, John and I didn't get to talk last time, so maybe this time we'll win each other over.
I wasn't here. That's true. So I got high expectations because all these guys and gals do is just talk about, boy, that Ryan, boy, that Australian, that accent. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'm excited too, as the famous Australian spokesperson, Big Kev's slogan. He's the Australian equivalent of Billy Mays. He used to say, I'm excited. So I'm excited too, John.
Now I need to go watch Billy Mays commercials.
No, watch Big Kev. Watch Big Kev.
Big Kev. Got it.
Mm-hmm. And he was a big guy. He's no longer with us. And the name kind of answers why.
God. Okay. On that morbid note, last week we did select the winner of the John Sheridan action figure from the reviews, and I usually do read reviews from Apple, but today I want to read something that came into us from Instagram, and this is from Charlie. And Charlie says, hello, I just wanted to let you know how much I love your podcast. I recently discovered it on Spotify and have been listening to catch up. B5 has been a favorite since I had first happened upon it, the episodes back in the 90s. Your podcast also serves as a practical purpose for me, as I have been recently diagnosed with early onset dementia. The fresh takes and lively discussions help engage my brain and have become part of my routine. I'm hoping that I remain present enough for the next couple of years to remain with you until the completion. Thank you for all your efforts in the show. They are appreciated. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us. We're with you, buddy. You'll be along for the ride. We'll get through this together.
We love you, Charlie.
Yeah, you got us all in the feels, and we don't have feels.
Yeah.
Not a single one of us feels anything except when you read that.
Yep.
Again, a reminder that if you want to communicate with us, Ryan, we're going to get to the show sooner or later, I swear. A reminder that if you want to communicate with us, you have a couple different ways to do it. As Charlie did on Instagram, we're also on Twitter and Facebook. All the links are below. We also have our Patreon, which is open to anyone who wants to help us out. We've got behind the scenes content on there. If you are a higher donor on the Patreon, we do have also the ability for you to do Q&As as well as send in audio that can be played on the show. No one's done that yet, but y'all know who you are, and y'all should probably send in a message every now and then. And then, of course, we do have our producers, the Grey Council, which are listed down below as well. Thank you so much for everybody for helping us out with that. And then if you want to send us an email, you can get a hold of us at gray17podcast@gmail.com. Again, all of the links are down below, and we love hearing from you all. Even if you diagnose me with mental illness, it's fine. It's fine. We still want to hear from you, so please send it all in. Andrew, film boy himself, I believe you have a synopsis for us for Soulmates.
Yes. Londo's 3 wives arrive on Babylon 5, 2 of whom Londo intends to divorce. Meanwhile, Talia's ex-husband also arrives and offers her the chance to leave Psychor. And while all this dramatic shit is going on, Delenn struggles with her newly acquired human characteristics.
Let's go ahead and hear our first impressions then, and let's do Nicole first. Nicole, first impressions on Soulmates.
So this was an interesting one. It was very lively. There was a lot going on. We had our first cuss word, which was exciting. The wives were interesting. It's funny because I had a first impression on each of them, and it was totally turned around at the end. But overall, I thought this was a good one. Hated Talia's ex-husband. What a douchebag. Did not like him. I really liked how protective Garibaldi was over Talia and how he just wanted to be there for her. Also, Sheridan jumping in and getting involved, but not like Sinclair level. He just, was like, hey, what's going on, Talia? I'm your friend, which I thought was really sweet. Oh, the party was fun. That was a good time. Also, I don't know if anyone noticed, but Londo said Ivanova. Just want to point that out. I wrote that down and highlighted it. So he said it wrong, which made me laugh. I just thought this was a fun episode. The party that Londo was having looked lit, and I would have liked to be there up into the bad part that happened, which we'll get into a little later. But overall, I thought this was a good episode. Not my favorite, but definitely not bad at all.
You heard it from Nicole first. I like a good party until somebody gets shot at. Then not so much. Let's go to John next. First impressions.
Well, unsurprisingly, I love this episode. There was a lot of Londo. There could have been even more Londo. He was throwing 100 almost the entire episode. Hilarious lines, which we can get into. I will say the other two things that I came away with was great guest stars this week. I know the last couple episodes we've been kind of shitting on the guest stars and their acting, but all of them brought it this week as well. So I was super happy to see that. A couple of that guy actors and actresses that I was like, oh, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But the other thing that I actually thought this was more of a Talia Garibaldi episode than a Londo episode. I know we focus on Londo and his wives, and I know that was a key plot, but I thought most of the actual development and most of the traditional story was more Talia and Garibaldi, and I actually liked it. Which maybe I'm coming around, Nicole. Maybe I do stand for Garibaldi.
Yes, finally.
Well, let's calm down. I don't know if I still am digging Talia and Garibaldi, but I enjoyed this episode. I can't wait to talk about Londo and his wives. And again, the just one-liners galore. This episode had lots of what you love about Babylon 5, sharp writing, good acting, good funny moments. I know Andrew very funnily himself brushed off Delen's human problems, but I thought those were hilarious and actually left me with a good question too at the end. So overall, I really enjoyed this episode. It was really a good palate cleanser from the last two clunkers we had to sit through. So happy to see it. Love Londo. And it was great having to interview Peter and then watch this episode and just bask in the awesomeness. I only wish we could have watched this episode first and then talk to him, and I would have had so many more questions, but it was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Jessi, first impressions.
I really enjoyed this episode. I laughed out loud several times, which was a refreshing feeling from the last one that I watched. I think that both plots were great. I enjoyed both. I enjoyed that they have just continued to develop Talia, because when I first started seeing her, I just didn't really care. I didn't like her or not like her. She was just present. So it's nice to see a little bit more depth to her. And Garibaldi is just steadily plucking at my heartstrings. He said a couple things that remind me of myself today. And it was just, I don't know. I just thoroughly enjoyed the whole episode.
Yeah. We're getting more Talia in the this week, last week, and then next week we'll actually have Talia as well too. So we're getting our fill of her after we haven't had her for the entire season.
Right.
Andrew, first impressions.
John, you're going to kill me, but I hated Londo in this episode.
Shots fired.
Well, I love Londo, but this episode kind of is a good reminder of the fact that he's still kind of a scumbag. But I did think the way the episode handled Talia having this alleged chance of leaving Psychor was great, and somewhat is starting to prove part of my prediction from, I think it was last week, about her defecting from Psychor. This probably was another seed getting planted. And John, the reason wasn't a huge fan of the Delen stuff. It was funny, but the quote unquote subplot, because there's not really much of a plot, it's just a bunch of throwaway gags. Didn't really feel all that important, and it probably could have been cut out. To
Andrew's comments on how Londo acted, I want to point out to the audience, Andrew has never been married, and I'll just leave it at that.
You don't know that.
That's true. I'm assuming. To somebody who has been married, Justin, tell me your first impressions on Babylon 5 Soulmates.
Yeah, definitely. I can feel a soft spot for Londo in this one. Having to deal with a dynamic personality for a spouse. But I thought the episode was fun. I actually kind of enjoyed the whole Delenn thing with she's trying to figure out how to be more human. And the whole hair thing was a little bit crazy, but I actually really liked Jakar. I thought this was a really good episode for Jakar as well. One thing that I kind of latched on to is him, getting a headache trying to figure out why Sinclair went to went to Minbar, and he's looking into that. So I'm glad to see them kind of still talking about that. And it just kind of revives my hope that maybe we'll see Sinclair back, at a later time during the show. But yeah, I mean, not much else to say that really hasn't already been said. It was a good episode. I liked it. I have no regrets.
Emily, do you have regrets?
No, I like this episode much better than the past, 2 or 3. I did like getting to see Londo's wives since he's talked about them. So actually getting to see them and know a little bit more about them was helpful. I thought the Talia storyline was really interesting. It gives us more insight into Psycor and just how shit of an organization it really is. Like trying to force members to breed to make better, telepaths is gross and wrong. And I actually thought the bit with Delenn and the hair was kind of funny because even as someone who is human and has been dealing with hair for a few years now, I still feel those struggles on a daily basis.
Same.
Sames. So let's go ahead and go to our first ones. And actually, Ryan, let's hear from you now. Impressions on Soulmates.
Well, yeah, it's a fun one. I think it's the first real comedy episode of Babylon 5. There's always comedy in episodes, but this feels the most directly. Everyone's going to have a zinger. Everyone's going to have a funny line. We're going to have whole scenes be, isn't it funny that Sheridan is meeting Londo's wives? Isn't it funny that Jakar is meeting Londo's wives? And many things of that nature. It's also interesting to look at it and even for like what you could say is a bit more of a lighter affair episodes, there's still many plot points and little moments that rely on continuity, like Lanier getting a pack of cards and it's like, hey, do you remember that episode? And so many little things like that. But I think one of the things that I find rather interesting is the tone is very fun, but the material is very dark. We are dealing with lots of oppression and lots of weird body politics and Talia's storyline. And even in Londo's storyline, one of his wives talks about how she as a woman is made the way she is by the patriarchy. And that's just in amongst all of the fun of Londo wanting to fuck all of his wives at the same time. And Talia having to deal with her ex-husband, who also just does not stop having quips. He just has quips. He makes Garibaldi look like a fool in the best of ways. He had so many great lines. So overall, I'm a big fan, and I like the writer as well. Peter David wrote this one, and he's a pretty prolific writer, comic books, Star Trek novels and stuff. And I'm sure other people talk about him, but overall, I'm a fan.
Yes, love me some Peter David.
Yeah, for me, Peter David will always be Star Trek novels and his Hulk series. His Hulk series is amazing. Let's go to Kevin. First impressions.
I also like Peter David's one of his major Star Wars books is quite good. But yeah, this episode's a lot of fun. You finally get the payoff of meeting death, famine, and pestilence. Londo's references to his wives from a previous episode in season 1. But lots of one-liners, lots of comedy. It's a very good episode. Definitely one that I would watch in a rewatch if I was doing some skipping around because it's just a lot more fun than some of the other episodes.
Blake, go for it.
So yeah, I like this episode, and it is one of the main comedy episodes that's came out so far in the series. And one of the things I think it shows, especially in this season, is the range of what Peter Jurassic, or I can't say that right, the range of what Peter can play in the role as Londo. And we see him go from this one where it's the fun-loving, having the party, and then we get later in the series as Londo keeps going through that almost transition on the path he's going to be going with to the character later in the series. And just that range that he has in this. I think this is a highlight of that. It's a fun episode. I don't like the Delenn plot in it, though. And my issue with it isn't that it doesn't make sense or isn't, have a place in the series. I think it's too late in the season. Yeah, I think if that would have been earlier in the season when Delenn first came out of the chrysalis and was working on that rather than in there now. Because what was it? The episode where she walked into the council chambers already had the hair done, everything fine. And now we're going back to the hair is all over the place and needing advice. So that part I didn't really care for.
See, for me,
interesting because every newcomer I hear, every episode they watch, they're like, we've got to talk about Delen's hair, including your podcast. Is like, what's with Delen's hair? And then you get a whole episode where the plot line is, guys, we're dealing with Delen's hair. Okay, she knows how to bathe it and style it now. Get over it. We're not going to go on with it anymore. So it's kind of like a weird kind of jab at the audience as well. It's like, guys, we know she has hair too.
See, whenever I think of this episode, I think about the hair more so now than before, and that's because I have two daughters with rather lengthy hair, and I will post the picture of a side-by-side with Delen and my daughter Addison because a few months ago she came downstairs and she had gotten a brush just completely it morphed into her head, and she came down with the biggest pouty face I've ever seen, and I feel the girl. I feel the pain. I do. But yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. I think this was absolutely, hey, we are, 6-7 episodes in, and people on the Usenet are talking about how she combs her hair under the bone. Let's just deal with it and get over it. And I think we're get some little world building in here too. The Minbari secrete something at night, so think about that one for a while and have fun.
This group doesn't need to think about anybody secreting.
No.
I think I'll pass. Thanks, Blake.
Nicole, tell us all about the secretions. Go for it.
Ew, no. Well, one thing I wanted to point out, which I forgot to mention before, was the very beginning when Garibaldi was teasing Veer about picking up women. I could not stop laughing because it was so like, and Veer didn't even get it. Like, he was like, what are you talking about? Like, he didn't get it. And like, it just seems so innocent and sweet and funny. Like, it just totally cracked me up. I was like, oh, Veer, that was just so funny. And then that Timoff, was that her name, the first wife? Mm-hmm. I wrote down on my paper, Timoff, what a bitch. And then I ended up totally changing my view of her by the end of the episode, So it was kind of funny, but I just wanted to point out the Veer thing at the beginning. And like, I think it was John, so many funny one-liners, just the whole episode. It was just, there was some deep tones in there, like Ryan pointed out, but I laughed a lot in this episode. So I just wanted to point that out. And then I have a lot more to tell, but I'll let somebody else talk for now.
Ironically, the one you called a bitch is the one who was really into breeding and calling other people bitches, which is interesting.
Ironic.
Right.
Yeah, I like with Veer, at the end, he took Garibaldi's advice and emphasized the word pleasure when he said goodbye to them. He said it was a pleasure to meet you. And it was nice. It was a nice little follow through on the gag.
Veer is always a learning animal. John, what do you got?
So I wanted to go back to talk about Delen for a little bit because it was the smallest plot line. I do agree with Blake a little bit in terms of they could have addressed the hair thing earlier, but to Ryan's point, I mean, they did, right? So people complain they did. So like I said, I have questions coming out of this. I know we have question time, but I am wondering just how important those scenes were. So I know I can say without spoilers that it was important to see Delen and Ivanova bond more, right? She says, hey, I trust you. That was good character development for the two of them. Now, seeing her go through and kind of have more human reactions, and again, especially at the end, that tag at the end about the cramps. So I wrote down, I said, and this is where the question comes in. I don't know if that was just a gag to go along with the rest of the gags, or if it's a precursor to talk about her transition into humanity and how far that's going to go. Is it going to change? Is she changing that much? How much is too much human versus, too little Minbari? I thought it was both funny and hopefully, I'll get to the questions later, potentially one of those, breadcrumbs that we talk about. The JMS is so good at just, dropping in one episode and paying off 20 episodes later. I took it as it was significant.
Yeah. I liked it. It follows through on Sheridan's sister asked in the episode she was in, she asked the literal question of, has she changed on a physiological level? And no one answered that question for her. And so this episode's kind of like, maybe.
Well, Nicole, go ahead.
Sorry, I was to say, I just want to kind of bounce off what John was saying. At the end, it alluded to her getting her period. My thought is, oh my God, if she can get a period, if she has sex with a human, she can get pregnant. And then are they going to have a Minbari human baby? Like, in my mind, I'm just going, I was getting the red yarn out, but it definitely was something like when she said that, I was like, oh, that sucks for her. And then I'm like, oh no, what if that means that she actually is turning physiologically different and could potentially conceive? Is she gonna like hook up with a human? Like, what's gonna happen? And then another thing I thought of that whole scene was when Lanier walked in and she had the curlers in her hair. He was so confused, and that made me laugh too. That was another favorite part of that scene. But I was kind of thinking that with you, John, too, about like what's gonna happen with this.
Emily.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing as Nicole. Like, okay, does that mean if she was in a relationship with a human, could they reproduce successfully? Would it be human? Would it be Minbari? Would it be like both? And then it also made me think in one of the previous episodes, there were people who wanted to take away her authority and her position after the transformation because they didn't think she was Minbari enough. So then it started to make me wonder, okay, if she's like physically changing even more than people can see on the outside, will that continue to undermine her position of authority if people find out?
Justin.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time where she actually states, for the record, this was a voluntary transition that she went into in order to bring the Minbari and the humans closer together. And that's one of the major questions that I'm going to be thinking about a lot going forward, is what exactly is that going to entail? Because she's not exactly being embraced by either side right now. So what's it going to take for her to actually bring everybody to the table? And going all the way back to humans are lost Minbari souls. What is she going to do to try and unite human and Minbari into one civilization? Is kind of wondering that's kind of where I'm thinking maybe this is going.
Yeah, and when she first showed up at the council chamber, she did say she was doing this to become a bridge of the two species, but she's definitely getting into more detail on it in this episode, that's for sure. John.
Yeah, Nicole mentioned Lanier, and it was a note that I wrote down as well. It was interesting, his reactions and his comments, because I took them as, oh, that looks interesting. I might be down to try that myself. Or, he touches his head and he thinks, boy, that hair looks cool. Maybe I want some rollers, or maybe I want a sweet afro or anything. I don't know. The impression I got from what he was saying was, reacting to, was that I kind of maybe like that. And maybe I want to get me a piece of that. I also, since Justin mentioned him in his initial impressions, there was a lot of good Jakar in this as well. He played a very small role, but a very important Hugh Hefner in a robe role, which I thought was fantastic. And for all the ladies out there, I guess Jakar would say you're welcome. Also interesting that he just basically said, or implied that we heard that he banged Lando's wife, which I also thought was hilarious because of their repartee in this episode, as well, as it keeps getting better and better and better. The friend you love to hate. I love that Lando was like, oh, I love doing that to him, when he thought he was the cause of the headaches. Jakar again at the end. Jakar had some awesome, great one-liners. So a solid Jakar episode too.
Ryan.
So, I agree. Jakar's great in this. There's a nice little piece of business where they're at the gala, the dinner, and he throws like a grape to Marielle, just a little piece of cheeky business there. So if you rewatch it, you can see that he's already flirting with her there. But I just want to come back with the Delenn thing. What I like about the Delenn plot is very, very small, but it allows her to have that conversation with Garibaldi and talk about soulmates, and to talk about the soul and what love is, and soul sickness, and just how we, throughout the story, even though it's a little comedy story, we're seeing Delenn have to grapple with what it is like to be in between. And she's here to talk to Garibaldi, who's also struggling with what it's like to be in between places as well, where he's having to flip between being security chief Garibaldi, who's always suspicious and paranoid, and the guy who's clearly got the feelings for Talia. And which one is the right one he's playing right now? Even the creepy ex-husband is just like, is this personal that you're going after me? Or is this professional? And so even though the Delenn thing is small, I kind of like that it did tie into one of the major themes of the episode.
Yeah, we need to talk more about Snidely, Mr. Piece of Shit guy, but Jessi, you go first.
I don't know who we're talking about, but
Talia's husband.
Oh,
who
yeah.
is,
Well, let me just go back to Jakar for 1 second. This is the first episode that I have ever even remotely found Jakar attractive in any way, shape, or form. But when he was in his robe, holy shit. He had it all. It was cut all the way down to his belly button. You could see like a little bit of a six pack, which I've never really been one to be like super excited about like really fit guys, but something about him today was like, he's kind of cute.
I felt it.
When you guys go back and do the rewatch and you listen to this again in 2 or 3 years, if you really want to hate yourself, I think I pointed out, like in one of the first episodes, we're going to see a lot more of Jakar.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
We've not what I thought you meant by that.
Right.
Oh, he was horny from the beginning. He wanted to whip it out in the first episode, but we have seen him in this robe before in Chrysalis when he came out with all of the human ladies, and he was in his sex robe then too.
Yeah,
so it's established that Jakar wears this when he's fucked. Just canon. That's canon.
I'm still thinking back to the amazement in Nicole's eyes when she found out that Andreas Katsoulis was the one-arm man, and that made that interview for me.
Still, I mean, I'm still blown away. I called my dad after like the next day and I was like, remember we were watching The Fugitive? That guy, he was in the podcast. I like went up and he's like, okay, great.
John, what do you got?
Well, I kind of unfortunately wanted to turn it to something a little serious. We can keep talking about Jakar, Drip, but Ryan actually made mention of it in his initial thoughts too, which is something I wrote down where we talk about, the wives. We can get into their dynamics, but they're I think it was Daguerre who'd mentioned, right? I am my father's daughter and Lando's wife, and what society basically is raised. And, because to Nicole's point, right? You meet someone and you kind of like have initial impression, and most of the time it's probably bad, depending on how they show up, and then maybe it changes. But, you don't really know what their backstory is or what brought them to this point. And the three of them, right? When I was doing the initial reaction, I thought, okay, Timov, she's going to be the stern one. But I don't know why I kind of saw that one coming. I was like, but she'll probably be the best one. And then Daguerre came and she was the conniving one. And I thought, okay. And then Ariel, I was like, okay, so she's the hot young one who's the sugar daddy one. Then by the end, when she makes those comments, she talks about it, you realize, oh, well, these women don't have any probably authority. They don't have any autonomy. They don't have anything going for them. They're basically sold off to men to be wives, and their entire existence is based on that and based on them. And as Londo made point, so I'll give it a little bit to Andrew, there was definitely a Franklin-ish creep factor when he was talking about, I'm going to divorce you and cut you off. You're not going to have any titles. You're not going to have any money outside of what you probably already stole from me. When you see it in a different light and you think, all they have is Londo. They probably didn't pick him, obviously. Most of them don't even like him. They were given as a gift, probably. And now they just have to live with him. And for the fact that at any time he can just say, well, now we're divorced, I'm cutting you off. And they might be homeless. I mean, the way he described it made me think that they got nothing. So those conniving or those like politicking and stuff, I had a much different respect for it and kind of a sadness for it than my initial reaction, which was to Nicole's point, like, look at these bitches. But
yeah.
Well, and I'll back you up on.
Marielle seems like the gold digger, but then by the end, she's actually the most cunning. Marielle actually had like a very, very clever plan by playing up that she's the innocent young, oh, I don't know anything. It was my gift all along. But to your point even more, John, arranged marriages, that's what Talia's story is too. She was forced into a marriage, and we're seeing the repercussions of that in a different way to how Londo's one is, where we're looking at Londo as the guy and he's having a lavish time having to divorce his wives, while Talia's story is from the woman's perspective and how she feels very pressured into what she has to do.
And I'll add a little bit to the support for pestilence, famine, and death, and the fact that realize too, when they were married off to this guy 20 years ago, he was an up-and-comer. We've heard about how he was in the wars. He was a fighter pilot. We've learned all of that. And then he gets stuck on Babylon 5 because no one cares about him. No one sees anything coming from him. So they've been dealing with the doldrums of not only being forced into a marriage, but being forced into a marriage that's not going to go anywhere or help them out. Now, of course, his star is now rising again, and we know why, but that just started happening. So they've had to deal with a lot of crap. And yeah, they do steal from his savings account, but I don't blame them.
It's funny that go on.
And Scott, you mentioned where they were when they ended up in these arranged marriages with Londo, but one of the things to touch on the notes, and it was subtle, I think, but Timov's father's name was covered briefly in the series with Al Ghul, and anyone who's a Batman fan or any of that, with Ra's al Ghul, head of the Demon, you look at where Lando's going, and the wife he keeps is basically the daughter of the demon in Arabic. So, there's the path of Lando's star rising, but, also where it's going, and that foreshadowing piece that JMS does in a lot of his writing. And, we know he was a Superman fan, so he's familiar with that universe too. And I definitely think there was an intentional nod there.
Yeah, and Peter David as well, being a big comic book guy, he's obviously involved in that. But I just wanted to say too, I think it's very dark that Lando's fun little plot all hinges on the fact that he has successfully killed a lot of people and he's being rewarded for doing so. This is an episode where the Centauri Emperor is like, you've done a good job recently. And what he's done recently is war crimes.
Jessi.
I was pleasantly surprised that he chose Timoth because I had picked her from the beginning. The other two were just a lot and they were trying too hard. And I said to my husband, I think that he's going to pick her. And he said, why would you pick her? I'm like, because that's what marriage is. She specifically says to him, I don't like you. I'm just going to merely tolerate you. And let's be clear to everybody that's ever been married, you have times that you go through that with people where you listen. I love my husband to the end of time, but he is the one person in my whole life that knows exactly how to irritate me the quickest, the most, like in the most severe way possible. And so sometimes you want somebody that just tells you how it is and doesn't lie to you and is real with you. And he said to her, I'm always going to know where I stand with you. So I was pleasantly surprised to see him pick her and not the young little gold digger one.
Nicole.
I was just going to basically say kind of what Jessi said, that I thought it was really cool that he didn't know that she helped him and she basically saved his life. And then he picked her anyway. He knows that where he stands with her. And I think with the other ones, Marielle, like playing the innocent little, oh, I don't know, look at me, I'm so cute. And the other one was really, really manipulative. I thought because at first I liked the second wife at the very, very first impression. And then I was like, oh, I've been bamboozled. These bitches suck. And then I was like, okay, I kind of like Timoth now. And then I was team Timoth after she gave him the blood transfusion. So, and I really love that foreshadowing what Blake said about the demon. That's crazy. So I do wonder if that is going to come into play at all into the show. Now that's another red yarn thing I have to add to my list.
Emily.
I was wondering what the divorce laws were because Lando could only get these divorces because, the emperor was happy with him. So it made me wonder what the laws are. And when he started talking to them about all the money they were skimming off his savings accounts and stuff, I figured, well, one, that was smart because if he divorces them, then maybe they got some money stashed aside. So, they can pay bills or whatever. And then I was wondering, but what happens if they don't divorce, but the husband dies? Like, do they get anything or are they just sucks to be you? Good luck. Timoth was my favorite from the beginning. I was like, he better keep her because she's the one that's going to tell him what it is. She's not going to bullshit him. She's not going to manipulate. She's going to be like, yeah, I don't like you, but I'll tolerate you because, this is where we are in our life. They've been together how long? She didn't seem like one that would want to put up with anybody else's bullshit. She was used to his, so it worked in some sense.
Well, she was the only one that was willing to save him too. After the other two were just going to let him die. And
yeah,
I guess probably they were going to take his money because that's why they were going to let him die so that they could have all his money. So,
yep. The one said that as long as he dies before the divorce goes through, they're fine. Right. They're set. Yeah.
That's why Marielle did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does anything get contested? Do they have kids? Do we know, are there children? Have they ever mentioned any offspring? Like, how does that work?
Well, they have 6 holes in the back. And then we've already discussed this.
Oh, they come out like the weird little frogs where they like come through the back and aggressive.
Oh, I didn't go that far, but
they're frogs. Yeah. The closest we've got is he said he has a nephew that's like a son, and that's like the closest we've had thus far.
John, what do you got?
Yeah, I will say Timoth, the biter, twice, I might add. The other reason I'm glad he chose her and to like Jessi also kind of knew he would end up choosing her. And it gives me hope, as I've been saying the last few episodes, that Lando is going through his creepy phase right now, but he will come out of it and make the right choice. And because he's got Timoth now, I wrote down that she gets to be his conscience. I don't know how much we'll see of her, but it's at least establishing he's got his little support network. He's got somebody who will essentially tell truth to power and let him know, as she did in this episode, you're devolving. My imagination filled in, since he's his first wife, he married her when he was, to Scott's point, young, not really anybody, didn't have a lot of clout, didn't have anything. Sure, he was maybe a soldier. And she's been with him. And I like to think, because I'm just such a Londo stan, that he was maybe an idealistic dreamer and wanted to help get the Centauri back to their previous position, and had a lot of cool ideas and was would do things the right way. And now that he's got his taste of power, he immediately makes the wrong decision, which is a super bummer. But hopefully that redemptive arc can come, and Timov will be part of that, letting him know, again, like in this episode, you devolved. You used to be somebody. You used to be a good person. You used to like good things. You're not this mass genocidal maniac who's making deals with the devil. I think someone had asked in one of the comments about, like, what is it about Londo that makes me think he'll end up choosing the right path. The first is, I'm just a fan and I hope I'm not supporting the bad guy. The second is little stuff like this that I think shows that, when push comes to shove, I think he will make the right choice. I think they also asked whether he would do it willingly or be pushed into it. I think it'll be a little bit of both. I think he'll be pushed into it. I've made this prediction before, but I think Jakar will be the one that figures out what's going on and will confront him. And I think it will be some mix again of like, I'm kind of caught, so I kind of got to do it. But instead of doubling down on the bad, I'm going to help my friends as he builds relationships with Sheridan and everyone else on the ship. So I was happy to see that. And yes, Andrew, unfortunately, Londo still got a little bit of that creep phase in him, but hopefully this is the beginning of the end. Hopefully he's moving out. And by the end of the season, he'll make his triumphant choice and defeat evil all by himself, and all hail Londo.
Well, like I said, I still like Londo. Just this episode didn't show him in a very good light.
Showed him in a funny light. I thought he was very, very funny. I loved Peter Jurasek's acting, especially when he was delighting in informing them that he's getting a divorce. And he has all of those amazing line deliveries. One of my personal favorite interactions, just because we haven't had a chance to talk about a lot of the funny lines and interactions. One of my personal favorites, when Marielle visits the quarters late at night and she's trying to seduce him, but Daguerre's already there too. And they're trying to organize a threesome there. And then, no, this is wrong. We can't do this. Timov should be here too. And just the absolute devilish glee that Peter Jurasek has with that line delivery is great. But then the great capra of it is Timov coming in and just dismissing it all. I'm not going to do the sexual Olympics. And they're just trying to express show their feelings to me. I can do that, and just slaps him in the face. The one thing I think many people have wanted to do in the show is slap Londo. And finally, someone gets to really slap him a good one. So Timov's my favorite as well. I think everyone loves Timov because she just has that. The actress is very good. She has some great lines, and she just doesn't put up with Londo's shit. So, Film Boy, I gotta ask, because when it popped up, I thought about you. The fisheye lens when he's drinking. Did you catch it?
I did not.
After the opening credits, we get some glorious close-up shots of a bunch of aliens, and then Londo having a drink, like he's cheering at the bar with everyone. He's in the corner of the screen.
Yes.
And
the fisheye lens is looking at him. I'm like, come on, Andrew's gonna love that. It's so different than anything we've seen before. Yeah, this episode's directed by the DP of the series. So whenever he directs an episode, keep an eye out, because his ones are the best looking episodes, even if one of them was TKO. Hey, TKO looked okay.
Well, also speaking of that scene, he's in the middle of delivering a joke, and he gets to the punchline. Do we ever find out what a Centauri air hose is?
I have a guess.
Do you want to know?
Yeah, I don't think I want to know, but
I also like the scene in Med Lab with Franklin. Franklin just not taking any Londo shit either. Stick it. So I enjoyed that. I think one of the Jakar lines that really had me laughing out loud in this, probably just because of Andreas Katsoulis's delivery, was, "Do I look like a rumor monger?" It was so funny. Katsoulis is just unbelievably good.
I did like when they had the ceremony and everyone's not wearing their shoes. They're all barefoot except for Jakar. He's got his big boots on with all the studs and everything. And they make a comment about it. And they're just like, you know how disrespectful that is? Yes, actually, yeah. He's very delighted. Andreas Katsoulis knows how to deliver lines with certain comedy and inflection that I like very much. But I just wanted to ask a bit about the Talia stuff and the Psychor stuff. And we get a lot of meaty and very disturbing information about the Psychor. And Her ex-boyfriend has a lot to offer, her ex-husband, I should say. And the fact that she has an ex-husband, Talia, I think Jessi said it, is a character that's hard to like because she's kind of not in the show a lot. And whenever she does come in the show, they just kind of throw anything at it. Like, here's a former lover. Garibaldi's in love with her. Here's another former lover. And I just wanted to know people's reactions a bit to the Talia stuff.
John?
Yeah, actually, I was also going to change gears and talk about the Talia aspect of it, especially, we talk about comics, right? So Stoner is essentially the Purple Man from Jessica Jones is what I took from that, which is super creepy if you think about that. I mean, that I don't know if you watched the Netflix version of Jessica Jones. Matt Tennett's version of the Purple Man was frightening. Being able to get people to do what you want. In this case, his empath is a little, do what pleases me, which again, super creepy, unbelievably creepy. I definitely wrote down, I wish Mike was here, our new scale. He is at Franklin levels of creepy from the jump. He came in batting 1,000 with that, and just he got worse. I mean, just the things that he would say and how he said them and what he was after was crazy. One thing I did want to point out, though, because the last two episodes, we talked so much about these power dynamics and like what's creepy, what's not creepy. Sheridan's interaction with Talia was exactly that's the not creepy way. That's what it should be. Hey, can we talk about this? She's like, I don't really think it's your business. His answer is like, you're right. It's probably not my business. But as a friend, I see someone who's struggling. I see someone who's hurting. If I can be of service or if I can help, let me know. And then leaves it at that. I didn't get any weird, creepy sexual vibes. Like, that's perfect. That's how you help a friend.
John, real quick to your point too on the Purple Man. I like that reference a lot, but I just heard a million voices cry out, and they're all Doctor Who fans. David Tennant.
Oh, I'm sorry.
By the way, number 10 and now number 14 is my favorite Doctor, so it's David Tennant. But good reference.
Thank you for saying it. I wanted to say it, but I'm like, I want to give John a break. He's trying.
No,
he doesn't know his British sci-fi well enough.
We'll never hear the end of that one.
Emily, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So did I miss it? Did they talk about the age difference between Talia and Matt? Because I thought it said that he was like some sort of mentor for her, which creates a bizarre power dynamic.
Just like with Ironheart.
Then he gets exactly tested with these, like, he can now control people's minds, which is another really disturbing power dynamic, which I think moves into issues of gaslighting and other things. And then just the whole thought that Psychor's like, oh, we don't care what you think. You two will get married because we want to breed more. Like,
you guys are going to find that more and more Psychor is just an interesting organization.
Yeah, I haven't liked Psychor from the beginning. I've thought they were just basically a garbage organization that was going to do really, really bad things. And it's just seems to be a very accurate assessment.
Emily, to your point too about his ability to be I don't know if you want to call it an empath or whatever. I actually
they call it an empath.
Is that what they okay? I actually don't like how they first introduce him because it's obvious he's controlling that guy. So the whole like I've given up my ability to be a telepath, we already saw that's not the case. So I think it would have been nice if we didn't have that initial scene. Garibaldi could have figured out another reason why he's shady. Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah. But I guess you need a reason up front for why Garibaldi's being suspicious, so it doesn't make him look like a overbearing dude who has a boner for a girl and he's got it out for this guy randomly. I guess you need that,
which is all true.
Cold open creepy thing.
I mean, like the audience knows it, but Garibaldi doesn't know who this guy is or anything. So, but that switch in personality would have been like, hey, something's weird here. And even for us as the audience who likely already has a distrust of Psychor and knows there's probably people out there with telepathic abilities that aren't in Psychor, to be like, oh, he's messing with someone's head. But is he like the weird robot-y dude that Kosh was dealing with? Or is he like a rogue telepath, basically, is what I thought at first. Was he maybe wasn't originally part of Psychor and was someone with abilities?
Blake.
So what's the Talia and Psychor parts? I got to figure out how I'm going to make some of these comments without getting yelled at by Scott for the wrong section of the show.
I can go ahead and pull out Jeff's buzzer if you'd like.
We might need it. But, looking at the right one, I think we started off the show talking about the order of the series. And without going into plot, I will say this is one of those areas they start to build some of the pieces around the Psychor. And I actually think some of this would have made more sense in the broadcast order with this and the next episode flipped. So there is some plot points in that this kind of builds on. So I think that is part of it. But generally, looking at the character of Talia, I think the character, and we know the character is not that well written. We've had issues with the writing with Talia, and it seems like they pull Talia out whenever there's Psychor, and it's, well, crap, we need the telepath, throw Talia in real quick. And I think they box themselves in with portraying Talia as the, quote, commercial telepath. She's in the background doing these business negotiations until, oh, now we've got Jason Ironheart. Oh, now we have, this wanker that shows up. And we have all of these other issues where Talia keeps coming into the center as, just, oh, she's your commercial telepath. So we see that it gets kind of boxed in with how she keeps coming into these situations and popping in. And I just don't think the writing's that strong.
Just to bounce off of one thing that Emily was saying about I think he definitely was Psychor. I think he even mentioned that it was Psychor. And I think Sheridan was the one that kind of pointed that out, where he was Psychor, and then they said, well, they let him leave, and everybody's like, you can't leave Psychor. Like, what was it? Garibaldi said you only go out feet first or something like that.
Originally showed up, I wasn't sure if he was Psychor or something else.
Yeah, I mean, I completely buy the fact that he was Psychor and he was just secretly retired from Psychor, where now he's definitely some kind of, to use a different, parlor term that I love to have, is some kind of sleeper agent for Psychor, where they can send him to do black ops. What was he really doing at that archaeological dig? Probably some kind of Psychor related mission. I think it's definitely interesting to see, and there's never just one. So how many more of these empaths are going around pushing people to do their will, is how, and then of course now let's get out the red yard and play that game, is how many of them were influencing things with Earth Alliance.
Nicole.
So right from the jump, I got to say, Garibaldi's securitying skills were on point, because he noticed the interaction between the guy yelling at the dick face, and he literally saw the guy's change in attitude and recognized, something's wrong here. And then when the security guard told Garibaldi, he just kind of makes you want to like him, and kind of, when he was like, well, why is he eating? Dinner's not for an hour. He's like, oh, well, I don't know. He just asked for it. Like, you can kind of see Garibaldi putting the pieces together, that he's controlling the mind of whoever he's interacting with. So I was like, there's no way that this dude is not active Psychor still. Even if he left, quote unquote, Psychor, he's still working for them off the books. And at the very end, when they basically give him the lowdown, Sheridan and Garibaldi are calling him out and saying, we know what you're up to. We think that you are officially, retired from Psychor, but unofficially still working for them. And just kind of like going and reading him the riot act about, we know what you're up to. And he was just such a callous prick from the beginning to the end, like the whole time. And I really just wanted Garibaldi to break his face. So, yeah, wanker. Sorry. He's a wanker. I really liked how Garibaldi was just so sweet and protective. And I know I'm a Garibaldi stan, and I'm standing the, Talia Garibaldi relationship, but this also was a development, for them as well, I think.
Ryan.
I actually really like Talia in this particular episode. I think she has the most difficult arc or story in the show thus far, because she's a victim. That's the whole entire thing. They even say that in the first episode with Ivanova. And so it means most of her storylines is she's a victim or a weak-willed character. And so in a cast of characters who are all very strong of will, including even Lanier and Via, it can make Talia stand out as a character that's hard to gravitate towards in this large cast of characters. But in this one, I thought she was actually pretty strong-willed, even when she was under mind control. I actually like that scene where Garibaldi stopped her in the elevator and she snapped at him and had a go at him for his constant behavior that he's been doing throughout this entire show, but then was good enough to actually come back and have a breather and go, hey, actually, I'm sorry about that before. I'm just in a certain place. And I also really love that final scene where Matt Stoner is telling her, you can read my mind. You can tell it's all true. And it's not even the fact that she doesn't necessarily want to slice a part of herself off, as she says about her psychic abilities, but as anyone who's been in an abusive relationship knows, there are those certain mind games that abusers use to basically destroy bits of the other partner. And him doing that there is just a textbook example, but being used in a sci-fi story. It's a sci-fi allegory, people. It's a sci-fi story touching about an psychologically abusive relationship. So for me, this is actually one of those ones where I look back and I just go, this is a good Talia episode. I also think that the actress actually gets a lot to work with. I think she gets to play a lot of different emotions. Her scenes with each character is different. Like how she talks to Sheridan is different to how she talks to Garibaldi and how she talks to so on and so forth.
Jessi.
I just want to double back to what Nicole was talking about when she was talking about Garibaldi and how protective he was. These are the parts of the show that I really thoroughly enjoy, are the parts that are just so real and so authentic. Like what he said as the security director, he said, I see things, I don't even know they're always there. Sometimes they're little, and they just put me on guard. In that line of work, 100% the case. Like you follow your instincts, you follow things that don't make sense to you. You see something and all of a sudden the hair on the back of your neck is standing up. That just spoke such volumes to me because it shows you that whoever the writers are outsourcing, I would assume outsourcing either experiences that they've had or people that they've worked with, and they're like drawing from all different walks of life, and it's appreciated. And I just, this episode was I think it was a really good one for Garibaldi. And just to touch base on, what you guys were talking about with Talia, like I said earlier, I do believe that she's just so underwritten that she just exists in the world, and they use her when they need to, but they haven't to this point haven't developed her in any way, shape, or form. So it's exciting to see what they're going to do with her.
Emily.
I was confused on how she didn't realize that he was in her head.
Right.
Being a telepath, because I mean, even like some of the non-telepath characters have figured out when a telepath has been like inside their head. So I was confused on how she wouldn't have recognized it as happening. And I didn't know if that's just because writing it that way fit better when trying to demonstrate an abusive relationship, because it can be done in ways that the person being abused will not notice or like will not recognize, or if it was just kind of an overlooked bit.
Yeah, I think it kind of plays into, because he's an empath, we don't know how their abilities work in relation to telepaths, but I look at it as just a simple, it's an influence of that person's emotions, while telepaths in other episodes have been very much an influence of directly attacking like the mind and the brain. So it's a more hard-hitting feel, like you can hear people's voices in your head. So that's like a tactile emotion, like a tactile sense, while this is just I'm altering your emotions. But yeah, it is left up in the air. But his character is also throughout the episode left up in the air. He has that great line at Garibaldi where Garibaldi says, I'm going to keep an eye on you. And he tells him, you better keep 2 eyes on me.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping Garibaldi could have just like hauled off and smacked him with the chair for that one. Like, I generally don't go for violence, but I feel like he just really had a go.
He had so many great one-liners, like that one where he asked where they had him in custody, and he said, if I call you an idiot in public, can you arrest me for giving away state secrets?
Anybody else have anything they want to discuss before we get into questions, predictions?
Did anyone else notice that Lurch was in this episode?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was waiting for a spot to mention that. Yes.
Got 2 scenes. 2 scenes.
Yep.
Oh, was he the antique dealer?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah. How could you miss it?
That was him.
He was also on TNG. He played
Mr. Holm, Luxana's aide.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and the giant from Twin Peaks this season has had a lot of Twin Peaks actors and writers. The Long Dark had Scott Frost, the writer of Twin Peaks. We've had like a few, Dr. Jacoby from Twin Peaks was Captain Maynard. There's a few whatever. JMS really was into Twin Peaks this season, and he wanted people in it somehow, and he got them.
I liked him. He was also the Gollum, and I don't know if you watched the BBC Sherlock series. All the guest stars have been in a bunch. Super McCreepy is basically, if you've played any video game in the last like 30 years, you probably he's been in everything.
He's in it. He's in everything.
And Jean Carr just showed up on Willow, so she's still acting.
She was Malcolm Reed's mother in Enterprise, so she's also in Star Trek. Yeah, the creepy guy, Matt Stoner, he's in everything. I think most recently, I remember him in Supernatural, where he played a guy that was possessed by God. So you get to see this creepy dude just be like, I am now possessed by the Lord. And it's very strange because he still has that voice. Hello. He sounds like he needs a throat lozenge every time he talks.
Let's go ahead and get into our questions predictions, where we asked our newbies before we just them out the airlock what lingering questions and predictions they have after this episode, realizing they haven't watched anything after that. So let's go ahead and go to Emily first. Questions and prediction.
I just want to know if we'll see Londo's wives again or ex-wives. So current wife and the ex-wives, if they'll make an appearance. I want to know how many more of these empaths created by Psychor are actually out there, and if the people in Psychor have the capabilities of like counteracting their abilities, because it seems pretty dangerous.
And Justin, questions, predictions.
I think I've already kind of alluded to them. Basically, Sinclair's departure, I think, will become a topic where hopefully maybe even we see him appear on a show later. I agree with Emily. Like, how many more of these empaths are there, and where are they? What are they doing?
Jessi, questions, predictions.
I want to know how the Minbari have babies. Because the question at the end about her having cramps makes me wonder how she had babies before. So, and that's it.
Tell Jessi about the birds and the bees. That's what she wants.
I know. Please do. Please. The question of where we're talking
that's
about.
how babies are made.
She's talking. Yeah, exactly. I'm ready to say she's talking about how babies are made and then has an orgasm. It's great.
Yes. Oh God. Oh, you see, I was gonna make it weird. I'm gonna make it weirder. I want to know how Jakar's
built
stuff looks like.
He's got a pouch. We know that.
He says, "Kiss my pouch" a bunch.
Yeah, he's a marsupial, as Andrew pointed out.
It was Mike who pointed it out first.
Oh, was it Mike? It was one, too.
Okay, so he has a pouch. Okay.
To keep
and it's pretty deep down because we've seen fairly far without seeing the pouch. So.
But there's gotta be more than a pouch, because he sleeps.
Well, I would hope so.
With humans. So there's gotta be something there.
Maybe he likes to watch. I don't know.
Maybe if you like a dog and it's inside and it comes out.
Here's what I want you to do.
Red Rocket.
He's got a 0 to 60. Jessi, what I want you to do is get on Twitter and ask JMS these hard-hitting, important questions.
I don't have Twitter, and don't get me cussed out, Scott. Like, listen.
Fire a few old Usenets.
I'm not trying to be like you, sir.
Andrew's on Twitter. Andrew, ask JMS.
Ask JMS.
Jakar's.
Sure, I'll get yelled at by him.
Right. Maybe he'll come on here and yell at us in person.
The Usenets talk far less about tentacles and dicks than what this group does. So I
know.
Don't find the answer there.
And abusive characters, a lot less of that.
That had that question, though, let's be very clear.
It's not our fault they were soft in the 90s.
On that note, John, questions, predictions, please.
Unsurprisingly, I have a ton of questions. But before I get to them, I do want to point out, Justin, you made me think of Jakar's hilarious line to Sheridan about Sinclair. About like, oh, maybe you'll disappear and then you'll go live in Minbari and then you'll just be gone. Like, I thought it was another good one-liner from Jakar. Okay, into the questions. So I have a bunch about how the Centauri marriage thing works, right? And Scott, Blake, first one's Kevin. Cut me off if you either know the answer or it's not important or whatever, because I literally wrote in one of these, am I nitpicking? Probably. So how many wives you're supposed to have? How many can you have? Is every marriage arranged in all of the different casts in terms of all of the different classes? I know there was a previous episode, we had that Romeo and Juliet couple-ish that, wanted to be married but couldn't or whatever. But I have lots of questions about how that works.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. The only other time we know about this so far is when those cousins of Veer, or one of them was a cousin of Veer, were trying not to be married to their betrothed. And it was very culturally taboo that they were trying to do that. So based on what we know there, it seems like betrothal, especially in there's a tier system or class system in this entire, we've heard a little bit about. So especially in the higher class structure, it's kind of assumed that you're going to marry who your family wants to marry for gain. And when you don't it becomes a problem.
Love.
Yeah.
You don't marry for love, except for we also do know, just to answer partly, are all marriages arranged? We do know that Londo married a random dancer at one time, and he talked about that. And then he woke up the next morning and is like, "Oh, that was really sweet." No, she had this voice that could curdle milk. So we do know also that they can also not have to do arranged marriages. But it seems like the political sphere is you get arranged marriages. It seems for at least the higher ups.
I just assumed that marriage happened in Vegas.
Which, thanks for that, Londo. My dog is now growling.
So Emily had mentioned it, but I also wrote it down, right? So how old are telepaths, not only when they begin their training, but when they go to, I think they call it the academy, because we talked about it a little bit, I think it was last episode, we talked about her tutor, or not tutor, her friend, the older friend.
Indoctrinator, yeah.
And then now, Stoner is like, oh, well, here is my senior to my freshman is how I kind of took that, which was, again, to Emily's point.
Talia said last episode she joined the Corps when she was 5. So she doesn't remember her parents because she joined when she was 5. And so the Corps is her mother, the Corps is her father.
Yeah, and then there was some like Jeffrey Combs who got it during puberty, and then they were yanked out of whatever they wanted to do and thrust into Psi Corps. So he wanted to be Earth Force, but he had to be Psi Corps. So we've had those stories too. Yeah,
so really I think it's as soon, and we will learn more, but I'm not going to get into anything else, but as soon as somebody presents himself as a telepath, Psi Corps gets involved.
Right. But so I don't know if that makes it better or worse. So like, did he meet her when she was 5 and he was creeping on her, and then they turned like, because the way she made it sound, and maybe I just didn't hear, like it happened pretty quick that he was into her and she was like, what? And then Psi Corps was like, oh, you guys are awesome. You guys should totally mate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be at least breeding age, right? For them to be paired together. And Psi Corps seems pretty screwy. I mean, Ironheart was also her teacher and mentor, and that actor was clearly older than her as well. So it's not an unset precedent in this show that Psi Corps is weird with that.
I agree they, obviously have to wait for breeding age, but knowing what we know of Psi Corps already, I would not doubt at all if they did a DNA test as soon as she walked in the door and said, okay, here's her matches. Let's get them talking.
Okay. To go back to the Centauri women. So do they not grow hair except for the one ponytail? And is that only for younger women? Because Londo's older wives didn't have any hair. So like, obviously the Centauri have males have very distinct hair. The women don't have any hair, or at least one ponytail that may or may not stay through old age.
I love the fact that I have to answer this question this way and not the other ones you've already asked. This will come up later, and so we'll talk about it later.
Fantastic. There's a Beyond the Rim. Okay.
I love the fact that I could get through the Psi Corps without saying that, but when we get to Londo's hair...
So Garibaldi again threatens to space Creeper McCreeperson. It said a lot. Does anyone ever actually get space? Is that a legit punishment? Because it seems super cruel and unusual.
Remember, the ombudsman said back in first season that the penalty for X, Y, and Z is either brainwashing or being spaced. Or actually, I think they said the only time you can be spaced is for treason. And mutiny. Treason and mutiny.
Which they were threatening with Garibaldi's right-hand man earlier in the season.
Yes.
So they actually
do, but it's very it's not used, because when somebody gets to that severe of a crime, most of them, as we've seen, get the mind wipe.
Right. Okay. This next one I mentioned a little bit, like if Talia is as anti-Psi Corps as she appears, why did she still lie to Sheridan? Why didn't she come forward with it? So Delen's hair, I still actually have questions. So does it grow under the bone? Does she comb it under the bone? Does it grow out above the bone in a different direction? I'm so confused about where this hair comes from and how it works. So
anybody have any fashion comments on her hair?
Can I answer that for him?
Ryan, go for it.
John, you're going to go to the grave wondering that, okay, buddy? You're going to go to the grave. I wonder it. Everyone wonders it. It's just one of those things where they just said, this will be cool in makeup, and then you look at it and you just wonder, how does it work? You're going to die wondering, okay? It's just one of those things where every alien show has that one alien where they go, it looked cool. Is it practical? Nah. The troll, they have spots all the way down. Why not?
Until they only do that because we don't want to make Jadzia look unattractive, because the Trill did not look like that in TNG at all.
No, they didn't.
Ryan, you're right. But there's much more that changed to Delenn than just her hair, too. Her ears moved. The Minbari ears are on their neck. Now she has human ears. So much changed. It is just odd.
Well, Ryan's answer, I'll go to my grave with it, is better or worse than we'll talk about it Beyond the Rim. At least Beyond the Rim, I can assume in a couple of years I might get that answer. Now I'm just doomed to just look at Mira Furlan for the next 3 years and just wonder what could have been.
Note to self, John would rather be told to fuck off than to say we'll answer it later. Noted. I've got it.
That's direct. Okay, then I can fuck off and move on. Since we're talking about Delenn, are these human changes, is that like a precursor to, as was mentioned earlier, does that mean if she menstruates, can she have children? Are they more human than Minbari? Blah, 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 blah. And then most of the prediction I've also kind of mentioned about what I think is going to happen. So excited.
Londo's still going to turn around on you, right?
I'm Team Londo. Have faith, man. Have faith.
Andrew, what do you got?
I really only have one prediction, which is that Londo and Timov, as now his sole wife, they will learn to legitimately care about each other and how we commonly think of a marriage. And I think she will be a driving force in his turning back to the good side.
Nicole, questions, predictions.
So questions, I want to know, does, Delenn now menstruate? And if so, can she have babies with humans? Also a prediction, I think she's going to have a baby with a human. She's going to hook up with a person and they're totally going to have a kid. I think it's going to happen. And it's just going to be like the gap between the humans and the Minbaris, and this child is going to be significant. That's what I think. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, what does it say about my circle of fucking friends that all we talk about is menstruation and Jakar's penis?
I have other things. I have other points. I have other ones. So another question I had was, what is going to happen with Talia going forward? Like, now that she's kind of expressed that she's kind of over the Psychor and their bullshit, but also that's all she knows. So she's afraid to try to even do anything else. So what's going to happen with her? Is she going to stick around? Is she going to, find a way to try to get out of Psychor? Is she going to report what she saw in that vision? I still think, John, I know you said what you'd said earlier about that. I still think she didn't say anything to Sheridan because she was trying to figure out what her next move was going to be and trying to figure out who the person was. So I feel like, I guess, a prediction wise, there might be some more backlash from that as well. Are we going to see Dickface Stoner again? Is he going to come back and mess with them? And are we going to see more empaths? Are we going to see this become a concurrent problem with people manipulating the situation because they can? And then my other prediction, besides Delenn hooking up with a human and having a baby, I think that, I don't know, I think that this whole dynamic with the whole Psychor thing I don't think this is going to be the last of seeing this specific issue with Talia and battling with what she wants.
I'm surprised nobody asked about, do we see the 20th century museum in every single episode where the electric guitar was and Talia was strumming it for no reason?
I had that same guitar when I was a kid.
She was touching the exhibition.
The guitar
I don't think you can do that.
No. The guitar was not the main point, because I did write this down. The blender shake maker, whatever, in the back. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah.
That's what humanity must preserve and to show other species. Have you ever had milk? Have you ever had ice? Let me blow your mind with both of those bitches together.
There's actually a lot of interesting, not maybe interesting for a guy with a history degree, but what will people think of us based on archaeology? And for example, they're going to assume that Abraham Lincoln was a god in our pantheon because there's so many freaking statues of Abraham Lincoln. They're going to assume the shake weight was important to our lifestyles, I guess. I don't know.
And they'll probably assume that these golden arches were some kind of religious artifact.
Yes, that was where they convened for their Sunday giving of diabetes, was the golden arches.
What will they think of the fleshlight?
It's made out of plastic. It'll deteriorate. You're fine. You're fine. Okay, on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap up our conversation with our newbies. We're going to adjust them out the airlock, and then we will talk about all of these important conversation points, including the blender in the museum, during Beyond the Rim. So until next week when we talk about A Race Through Dark Places, I'm Scott, and with me has been
Emily,
Blake,
Justin,
Andrew,
Jessi,
Nicole,
John,
Evan,
and Ryan from Yum Yum Podcast, the only Australian Babylon 5 podcast in the universe. We're rewatching episodes of Babylon 5. We're a bit way through season 4 currently, so everything's popping off. You can find me and the podcast anywhere. Just look up Yum Yum Pod or Yum Yum Podcast.
And don't talk to him about Voyager. He gets really cranky.
Because you have shit takes, mister. You're like, oh, actually, Star Trek Picard's better than Voyager. Like, suck my dick. Jesus Christ.
Whoa.
My problem, as much as I hate agreeing with Scott sometimes, Voyager really did suck.
Hold on.
Not as much as
Time
Picard.
out. Can you fuckers do this on Beyond the Rim so I can go to bed and I don't have to listen to it? I love you guys.
Thank you for listening to Grey 17, a Babylon 5 podcast. You can find all the places to listen to this podcast and links to our social media accounts at anchor.fm/Grey17podcast. We want to hear from you, so please join the discussion on Facebook and Twitter. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Grey 17 is a part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. You can find all the Front Row shows at thefrontrownetwork.com. Grey 17 is not affiliated with, and this podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Warner Brothers or any other owners of the Babylon 5 copyright. All audio clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review, and no infringement is intended. The opening and closing Babylon 5 themes are available from Falling Matter on YouTube.
And what's out there?
The Rim,
And beyond that?
the truth.
Welcome back to Beyond the Rim. Again, final warning, we will be discussing spoilers of anything that's happened after Soulmates. So if you've not watched on, this is where you should drop off. For everyone else, let's get into the questions and predictions from our newbies. And guys, the first ones really deal with the telepaths. We have the first one is, how old are the telepaths when they begin the academy? And what is the Psychor empaths up to? And will we see more of Stoner and the empaths as well, too? So I think we can kind of get all of those lumped into one little conversation.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about it with the telepaths and the academy. It's kind of left a vague enough thing, but basically, once they know you're a telepath, they grab you in and try to train you, or you get the sleepers, or you go to prison.
Yeah, I keep remembering the commercial we see later on, when one of the ISN episodes, and I'm blanking
Where they
on
have
the
the
name.
testing centers and all that, and
you got the kid, and the kid's like, they bully me at school, Mom, and then the Psychor guy shows up and says, "You're a telepath, Jimmy," and then
John?
so I made. Yeah, well, it was John. I just made that up, but thank you. But so they absolutely, the propaganda starts young, and they definitely, as soon as they can get their hands on them, they grab them, because as Ironheart told us, and as we get figured out here with their breeding program, there's so few telepaths that they can't let any slip through their fingers. So as soon as they find them, they're going to grab them.
Well, and some of that I was watching with that, and what they mentioned later in one of those episodes, is they also have screenings that they do. And I was recently rewatching Man in the High Castle, and thinking about some of the Nazi connections and pulling Justin. You look at the screenings they did of kids for different things and through society, and you see the overtones of that kind of throughout with the Psychor and Earth Force, especially as we're heading into this descent into the totalitarian state that we're going to end up with. So I think that's a very intentional way they did that. And again, even pulling JMS's biography with his own family, his family has familiarity with what these people did. And I think he's projecting that into this too.
Man, the High Castle. Now that is a show that peaked in season 1.
Yes.
I haven't watched past the first 2 episodes, but it has Wang from Space Above and Beyond in it.
Yeah.
Inspector Keto. So it's great to see him. But just to think about the screenings as well, and just an interesting thing about like how much they've got their fingers in the pie, that will also come back up in the next episode with Franklin, and how he reveals how he knows lots of things because doctors have to be used and have to be aware of what's going on with telepaths and finding them and then sending them off. So that's kind of an interesting little thread.
I think we covered everything else on that too. I mean, we're not going to really see empaths again. We're going to mainly see telepaths moving forward. And I think the empath is just a one-time thing, much like Bureau 13. I'm still looking forward to when these guys figured out that they were so excited about Bureau 13 the last episode. They're never going to hear about it again. So, which gets into our next
remnants of Bureau 13 throughout the rest of the season with Control, but never the name Bureau 13 again.
But Justin is so excited. We finally have an organization that has been pulling all the strings. I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. So to that point, if Talia is not loyal to Psy-Corps, why didn't she tell Sheridan about Agent 13 and the surgery? And is the Psy-Corps not net important?
It just goes back to what we were just saying about propaganda. Talia is a victim of indoctrination, and that's a very, very, very difficult thing to break, especially for someone like her who grew up in it, was manipulated at a young age, as we heard in the previous episode with Abby, literally like mind control, like altering her brain a bit. But eventually, kinda, she figures that she needs to make a snapping point. But I think just, why doesn't she tell Sheridan anything? Is it because, at least I always wonder, is it because Sheridan on the outside looks like a good boy? That's why they hired him to be on Babylon 5. Like he looks on the appearance like a good boy. And Talia doesn't really know that he isn't all what he seems, really. At least at this point, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think everyone's kind of still, aside from Ivanova, who's known him already, everyone's still kind of filling out Sheridan. And we're going to see that for several more episodes until they have their little sit down and get the spiel. But yeah, I mean, it definitely is something where Talia doesn't know who she's dealing with. And also, I don't know if I actually prescribe to this theory or not, but I'm sure there's a theory out there that even though Control is latent and not really taking an active role, we do know from last episode that Control can pop up when it needs to. So maybe it's subconsciously holding her back as well, too.
That was kind of what I was assuming, given the fact that it's clearly, it's latent, but it's still there.
Mm-hmm. Even in the episode where Control gets exposed, at that last scene when Talia's in the room packing her stuff up to go, and Ivanova goes to see her, and Talia says this line about as Control is taken fully over, this one says, "I was the voice whispering her in the ear, telling her all of the things to say to get close to you." Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. Control absolutely has a background influence, regardless of which personality is in the forefront.
Which, by the way, in my headcanon, that's Control lying. I think Control said that just to upset her, because I don't think that's the case. But
we'll have to see.
So, moving right along, how important are the scenes with Ivanova and Delen's bonding? And is this a precursor to seeing more about her transition to being partially human? And how do Minbari have children? I think this was absolutely Peter David and JMS saying, we need something for Ivanova to do.
She's a woman. So she can help Delen, because I would never say that Delen and Ivanova are great friends.
No, I don't think we've seen much of this. Yeah, I mean, it's cute, and I mean, you could have gone to Talia as well too, but obviously Talia had more to do in this episode. But I still say that these scenes between her, these two characters, are what stands out to me the most of this entire episode. Yeah. Even with Londo's wives, the Delenn stuff is just more interesting to me. Maybe because we get less of it, and we will get less of it. But yeah, I mean, that's where it is. And in terms of how do Minbari have children, we never get told how Minbari have children, but they are without a doubt foreshadowing now with the cramps and everything else that she now has, for lack of a better term, a uterus. And so that will come up, obviously. And this is them stringing that along, saying it's not just facial features that have changed. Her entire inner bodily functions have changed as well, too.
It's not just the hair.
No. Or the ears.
It's not just the bone. It's not just the fact that she has different nails. I don't think anyone ever talks about that, but she has different nails after she becomes human. I find that a rather strange thing, but it's there.
But we also,
in the first season, she had like triangular nails all the time. It's just funny because they like true. Triangles. They're Minbari.
They're as much though as this. I'm reading into this way too much, but our guys have asked, how Minbari is she still? But now we learn too, she still doesn't sweat. So she absolutely did keep Minbari features and functions as well too. I think one of our commenters on YouTube stated that she believes that Delenn is almost 100% human now. And I don't think that's the case. I think she is absolutely a hybrid of the two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's the question in season 4, when we learn about Delenn's lineage of how Minbari was she ever.
Yeah, that's true.
How Minbari are any of them, thanks to Sinclair fucking so much and corrupting the purity of the race with his DNA. Or as they call it, souls.
Yes. Now, anyone who glows has a little bit of Sinclair's glow in them. That's for sure. Does this mean that Delenn can conceive with a human successfully? Yes. And will her continuing to change further undermine her authority even more as a Minbari leader? Yes.
Yes, yes. Naroon is knocking at the door saying, yes. Maybe I'll be back soon, to yell at Delenn and have a very funny exchange where he talks and she says, who's that? I don't recognize you. It's like, how the hell do you not recognize that Scar-sounding voice? Come on. I always think about that. I think about that a lot.
Naroon is
Hello,
the one
Delenn.
who knocks.
Hello, Delenn. It's me, Naroon. Who?
Yeah, we absolutely do know that they're going to conceive because we get David down the road.
It's funny that none of them said Sheridan.
That's true. I think because they're still stuck on the Sinclair bandwagon.
They definitely are.
And they can.
But Sinclair had Catherine.
That's true. I mean, and as we will discuss when we release our bonus episode on this, I mean, it absolutely was the plan that Delenn and Sinclair were going to get together. So these guys are reading into what they saw in season 1, and we haven't had enough interactions with Sheridan and Delenn yet to see that chemistry. Because I think
next episode,
Mira and Bruce absolutely have chemistry in this show. We just haven't seen it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, next episode it will be when they go on their dinner date. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they'll be shipping the two of them after that episode. I'm sure of it.
They ship everybody.
But I know, but not yet, because you're right, Scott. They just haven't had hardly any interaction at this point, and what they've had has been cordial, and that's it.
Correct. Yeah, okay. And I guess that they haven't shipped everybody because Monkey Man Bartender hasn't been shipped with anybody yet.
Nagrath? Has Nagrath been shipped with Lou?
Oh, that's true. Lou and Nagrath.
What will it take for both humans and Minbari to embrace Delenn and her being a bridge between the races?
They're never going to. At least not all of them. They're never going to.
Dissolve the Grey Council and let the workers unite is the answer.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, the Warriors are never going to fully get behind her. The religious cast.
Naroon showed that it's possible, though.
It is. It is, but we don't see it. I mean, and even let's take the bridge the other way. We see in Deconstruction of Falling Stars that there's still humans that will continue to question everything as well too. So I mean, she's never going to be a full bridge for anybody.
The cycle of behaviors continue on and on and on. We come back to fascism, we come back to bigotry, but even within the series, though, in season 5, they make a point about how there are now warrior cast members in the Rangers. So there is a sway, there is a change, and she's seen as a whole, like as this big figure in Minbari culture. So I do think there is sways and changes throughout, and just Naroon's existence as just an individual who represents many can show that things can change.
I still want that Babylon 5 spinoff where you have Talon and Naroon and Veer and just the underlings all running the show. What are Centauri laws regarding divorce? We've already kind of hit on that. Anyone else have anything they want to talk about with that again?
Well, on the part when the husband dies, and there's the episode when Londo's friend comes back who's going to be disgraced with the Senate, disgraced within society.
Mm-hmm.
And, they have the sword fight. And one of the things that he says is, take care of my family when I'm gone and the wives. So I kind of wonder if some of it depends on how the marriage ends or how the circumstance ends.
That makes sense.
Yep.
If it's a husband that's killed, is it an ally of the house that takes responsibility at that point, or someone within the house who takes responsibility? So I think there's some pieces there that we'll see a little bit of.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and for the B5 nerds out there who've read the books and know shit, apparently in the beginning movie, the children that Londo is talking to and the woman there are like Reefer's family that Londo has taken because he killed Reefer, and so he takes Reefer, and he says that as Rock right out in a hiding place that basically everything that was Reefer's is his now. So again, possession is the thing that happens, but that's also in the case of if people get murdered rather than if they just die naturally or from other things.
Mm-hmm.
So is disgrace part of that? If the family is disgraced, then
I think family name is extremely important to Centauri.
Oh, sure.
And lineage is everything. And so if your name is disgraced, then there's nothing you have. You're done.
Yeah, because Reefer was disgraced because he got framed by Londo for trying to collaborate with the Narn. And then he got stomped to death.
I love that episode. Do we ever see Londo's wives and ex-wives again?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Why?
Because Timoff is a great character. I would love to see Timoff again.
Where was she in season 5?
Yeah.
Where was she? No mention even.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Unless by the time he becomes, and I don't know this, but unless by the time he becomes emperor, he annuls everything and he can move away from everything then, because he didn't want to stick with Timov. He was told by the emperor he had to have one of them. But yeah, I don't know.
But I think he kind of does love her in his own way.
Yeah, in his own little Londo way.
Yeah.
I wonder too, I mean, the trauma of losing Adira, I wonder how that plays into things as well too, when it happens. So maybe, Ryan, you may be right. Maybe he does love Timov, and when he realizes the shadows will take out everyone he loves, he may push her away too, just to protect her.
That's his motive. That's how he operates.
Mm-hmm. Let's move into predictions, guys. So, first prediction, Jakar will confront Londo and help him make the right choice to complete the redemptive story arc. Yeah, I think you're right. It's going to happen a couple times, actually. But I was actually just editing, which you guys have already heard at this point. I was just editing our interview with Peter, and I put in that scene where Jakar and Londo finally truly come together and realize that they can forgive each other. And it's the scene where Londo is basically telling Jakar, I may never see you again. And then Jakar allows him the opportunity to hear from Jakar that I can't forgive the Centauri, but I can forgive you. And it's a powerful scene.
It is. I watched that in preparation for the Peter interview, and
nice.
It struck me as we were talked in the episode, how different Londo can be throughout the series, and how good Peter Jurczyk was at portraying that, which is why I asked him that question, what he enjoyed doing more. And his answer surprised me that he really liked doing the comedy stuff. I thought that was really cool.
He's a comedy guy. That's always been his big thing.
The stuff he didn't like was the romance stuff, because he wasn't used to it. Because he never, as a character actor, he never got romances.
And that's why he kissed with his eyes open, Scott. It was a bad thing. Sorry.
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Oh, season 1's back. Here we go. Okay. So Sinclair. Go ahead.
And with the end of the redemptive arc, I mean, that the end of that is the two of them with their hands around each other's throat when he ends that to allow Londo to let Delenn and Sheridan escape.
Yes. And frees Londo of the Keeper by killing him. But yeah.
And of course, the most important player in Londo's redemptive arc is our boy Veer. Let's never forget Veer as the voice of reason.
Good old Stephen First. We're going to get so much more from him. I'm looking forward to the newbies really attaching themselves to him, because they're going to. Sinclair's departure will become a topic, and we will see him again. But it's going to take you another season. So, although we will talk about the Rangers
this season. Yeah,
that's true, because he will send the message. You're right. He will send the message, and we will get the Rangers.
Things. Yeah.
Yes.
This next one is a doozy. Delenn will hook up with a human and have a baby who will be very significant.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
Except for we won't get to actually see or know the baby.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
True.
That's the weirdest thing. I mean, because, looking back at the original plan, David was going to play a much bigger role. Like, he was going to be a character, and we'll get into that on another day. But we don't ever get to see David. Even the Lost Tales, they mention David, and he doesn't show up.
I'm fine with it. I don't care. I like that they didn't give us things.
That's true.
I mean, am I curious of what David would have looked like? Sure. Would he have had a bone on his hair? Maybe.
I'm more interested in what comes next for that lineage, and if it's just is it the symbolism of David as somebody who's come together with the species, or does he actually become something more? GMS's original plan was he becomes something more, but I think it's more symbolic than anything else. Also, the fact that we never really find out what happens with David and his keeper is interesting as well too.
Well, we at least do find out in the Deconstruction of Fallen Stars that David had a dark period in his life.
Yeah.
You can imagine it connects to that.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I think they do kind of go out of their way to leave it a little bit of a mystery, because Sleeping in the Light, I mean, that was the perfect opportunity. You could have shown David at that point.
Yeah.
But they even put in the specific dialogue that he was busy with his training and was specifically told, don't come, type thing.
I agree with that choice, because we don't care. And to Ryan's point, we don't care. I want Sleeping in Light to be the characters that I know and love saying goodbye to each other. If you interject another character in there, it's just a waste of 5 minutes that I wanted to be with Veer and Sheridan.
I get that. But again, I just think it does, though, add to they kept David as a bit of a mystery, I think. And I think it was intentional. I don't think they had once the revised plan got in place, I don't think they wanted to give us David.
Yep, I think you're right. Londo and Timov will learn to care for each other and will be a driving force for Londo's redemption. Nope. As we just discussed, poor Timov will not be back. She has exited stage right.
This next one is even funnier. Talia will defect from the Psi Corps.
No, these guys are in for a rude awakening when we get to divided loyalties, aren't they? Because none of them are even grasping on. I mean, the little nugget of hint they got last week where somebody is a sleeper on B5, they didn't even grasp onto that. And Justin, my conspiracy guy, he didn't even grasp onto it at all. So I mean, these guys are going to get hit hard when we get to that episode.
Oh yeah, and it's very amusing because what they're thinking is what it does, like, was the intended plan, does come into fruition, but with Lita, who was supposed to be the primary character to start with. I've never seen a show, can't recollect a show where we started with a character, then they had to leave for whatever reason, then they got replaced by another character who also had to leave, and then they got replaced by that exact same character, like the first character again. And it's just, I think about that just being such a wacky thing, and I can't wait for them to meet Lita again.
Well, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. That has been a great conversation, as always. You are an encyclopedia of useless knowledge, and we appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
I'm also looking at your shirt and now realizing it says "Bake It So," and that just is perfect.
Yep, it's pecan.
That shirt, Blake, you need that shirt for your special project.
But just so you know, I can't bake worth a shit, so that may not work.
Well, we'll just assume. So, Ryan, you want to give us a little bit more about Yum Yum before we head off to the unknown places?
To the unknown places, before you go to the uncharted territories, you can listen to my podcast where my wife and I rewatch and talk about episodes of science fiction television. We've covered Star Trek Discovery, that's where the name came from, and we're doing Babylon 5. We're making our way through season 4 currently, and it's been an absolute joy. We've had a lot of guests on there. We've had Scott on there. We've hoping to get some more people from this podcast on there at some point soon. And if you are looking for some deep analysis on episodes of science fiction television, come on over to Yum Yum Podcast. We like to do spotlight sections on actors that show up in episodes as well. Look over their stuff and where they are now and what we know them from and any interesting tidbits that we've learned along the way. So come on over to Yum Yum Pod, available pretty much everywhere. We're on YouTube even. We've got all the social medias happening, and we're on all the podcast hosting sites.
And you can find links to all that down below as well, too. So thanks again, Ryan, for joining us. So until next week, when we talk about A Race Through Dark Places, I've been Scott, and with me has been
Blake,
Kevin,
and Ryan.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
The secret of our marriage's success, Londo, is our lack of communication.